Okay, having in mind that red and cyan are complementary, and red and magenta are complementary and yellow and blue are too, we see this image and I notice that it has an excess of cyan, so I have to correct it with red. I go to Image, Adjustment, and I can use levels in this case. I'm going to use the channel filter, and as I have a problem with cyan, I will work with the red channel. On the red channel, using the slide arrow in the middle, I can either give it more tendency to cyan. If I go to the right, or tendency towards red, if I slide to left, the interesting thing is, if I got to the left instead of looking red, it is going to appear less cyan. This shows that adding red does not necessarily mean it is going to look red, but the more red, less cyan instead. The more red, less cyan. Let's click OK. We could also use this opportunity to give this image a little contrast, so that it may look a bit more vivid. Using the same technique, we can work this image. This image has an excess of yellow. The complementary for yellow is blue, so I can work on this image by adding blue. Instead of working with levels, I will use curves. Either way, I'm going to filter the colors. I want to work with blue. In this case, as the slide in the middle is not here, if I move upwards, it has a tendency toward blue. If I move downwards, it has a tendency towards yellow. As I want to reduce the level of yellow in this image, then I'm going to bend the curves upwards. It will look less yellow. Working with the same technique, we could work on this image. This image could be fixed using another tool named Color Balance. With Color Balance, in this case, we have on one side cyan, magenta, and yellow, just as in the box before, cyan, magenta, and yellow. And on the other side, red, green, and blue. Red, green, and blue. If you notice here, the interesting thing is that cyan is on front of red, magenta on front of green, and yellow on front of blue. This image has an excess of cyan, so we have to balance it with some red. Here, we will add some magenta to make it more vivid, and a little more yellow. I click on OK, and if we have a look at before and after of this image, we can realize that by simply changing the colors, we can get a radical difference. Here we have another example. In this case, for example, the excess of color here is green. We already know we can fix it using levels or curves or color balance. In this case, I'm going to use levels again. As green is already here, I want to subtract green, and I'm going to do that by adding magenta. On the left side, we have the color indicate here, and on the right hand, we have the complementary. As I add magenta, I reduce the amount of green on this image. In the case of this image, for example, it is obvious that there is an excess of yellow. We can begin with levels. In using the dropper, we assume the background should have been white. Immediately, this action begins to correct the image. Now, as we want to work with yellow, I choose the blue filter, and now I already know on one side I need to add the complementary of the yellow, which is blue, which is on the left side. We now went from... It also has an excess of magenta, adjustment color balance, and I add a little green to balance the excess of magenta we saw here. Notice how this image, which was this way, has been torn into this way. It is a radical change, from hell to heaven. Here we have another image. For example, on this one there is an excess of yellow. So we can go to curves. I noticed there is an excess of yellow, but at the same time it has a brightness problem. Let's work on the color problem first. To work on yellow we use blue. Bending upwards we add blue. Bending downwards we add yellow. So we bend it upwards, and it does no longer have the blue veil it had before. Now I can make it again on RGB mode, and with this line here I can ask for the image to have more contrast. I filter blue again. I think I add too much blue. We can see how this image is vivid. One more time. This could happen too. We could work on this image using color balance. There is an excess of magenta. We have to add some more green. I slide here, add some more blue, add a little cyan, maybe a little less green, and watch how lively it looks again. Summarizing, we have just seen how to use levels, curves, and color balance to correct color problems our image may have. And we can always help ourselves with the RGB and CMYK tables to learn which one is the complementary color.